Welcome back. From goosebumps when we stand on top of a mountain to watching the birth of a child, awe is that feeling, that response to the things which are vast and powerful. In the new book, Awe, The Science of Everyday Wonder, psychologist Dacher Keltner experiences and shares the emerging science of awe, revealing what physically happens when we have that feeling, that emotion, and why it's so important to seek it out every single day. It seems as though humans have kind of pondered this concept for many years. Philosopher Edmund Burke, he talked about the sublime in the 1700s. Why is it so important now to bring the idea of awe into our narrative?
Yeah, awe is one of the great questions about the human being, right? Why do we tear up at things that are vast and mysterious? And people have been writing about it in spiritual traditions, philosophical traditions, and now more recently, scientifically, which is what I've been part of. Why today? You know, coming out of the pandemic, pretty sophisticated analyses say there's a rise in depression and anxiety of 30%. And truly, Amity, when you look at what awe, a little brief burst of awe does for you in terms of your sense of stress and your reasoning and your sense of connection, it's hard to beat in terms of finding ourselves again in our world.
Finding that happiness. Is that why you say this feeling of awe is so critical to our well-being?
Yeah, it is. I mean, when we look at what it does, awe helps your heart. It benefits your immune system. It sharpens kids' reasoning. It gives a lot of people a sense of purpose, right, or meaning, which many feel is a bit lacking today.
Yeah.
And there are marvelous ways in which we can find awe. So I prescribe it regularly.
Well, then I guess my next question is, how do we find it? Because like you mentioned, after the pandemic, so many people are struggling right now, emotionally, mentally, financially. Is awe something that someone has to go to a beautiful resort in Sedona to find, or is it something that we can all grasp?
You know, one of the most surprising discoveries that I write about in this book, Awe, is what I call everyday awe. We survey people each night for 2 weeks in different parts of the world, and we find they experience awe 2 to 3 times a week, right? So that tells us just walking and looking at the clouds, or, you know, the gray sky of Seattle or whatever it is, you know, or sort of listening to what children say, just marveling at things. It's there for us to experience. And there are a lot of easy ways to go about it. You know, one is just to change your mindset. Give yourself some time where you're a little bit unscheduled, not task-driven. Go to things that are mysterious to you. And then I think that what I organized the book around are what I call 8 wonders. And they provide a roadmap for you, like moral beauty.
Yeah.
Who's somebody who really inspires you? What's a piece of music that brings you the tears? And just sample it a couple of minutes a day.
Speaking of children, I think I've watched my children become awestruck many times. I know that as a child, you've got that ability to just be in awe of things. When do we lose that in life?
Yeah. Scientifically, we don't know. I think it's intuitive to most of our listeners that childhood has very large quotients of awe, and we need our children to feel awe, right? It's good for their minds. It's good for their sense of community. They treat nature better out of experiences of awe. They're kinder human beings. I think that the middle of life tends to kind of sort of dampen awe, if you will. We know happiness drops during the middle of life, and happiness tends to correlate with awe. So that middle part of life where we're paying bills, working a lot, we can lose sight of this most human of emotions.
It sucks it out of us sometimes.
Yeah, too bad.
You were talking about some of your research. What does science say about awe?
The first thing is we have really learned how to identify experiences of awe. You know, awe is mysterious. It's often vast. It's beyond words. I've defined it as vast mysteries. And people will come to me and they'll say, you know, I hear you talking about awe, but was this an experience of awe? You know, I was at this conference and I got to dance with the Dalai Lama, and, you know, I'm like, pretty close to awe.
Yeah.
But what we know, you know, we now know if you are having an experience of a vast mystery and you feel quiet, you have a smaller sense of self, you feel less stressed, you get tears and goosebumps that rush up the back of your neck and your spine, that's probably awe, right? That's the profile of awe. So we've learned what it is. And we've learned, as I said earlier, how it's good for you, right? A couple of other findings, really striking. Awe helps kids in schools, right? If you feel awe, you are more curious about your subject matters and interested. Awe helps with the polarizing conflicts of our times. People who feel awe will see the humanity of somebody in a different political party more regularly. So awe is good news for us.
I heard that you consulted on one of my favorite films. It's a Pixar movie called Inside Out.
Yeah.
That is such a great way. Actually, I've used it to help my children identify emotions, which was great. But what did we learn about awe from that movie?
What it tells us about the role of emotions in the human mind, right? And emotions often are belittled, or we try to snuff them out. We give medicine to quiet certain emotions, like sadness, which was the hero of Inside Out, which I thought was a brilliant call. And what that movie teaches us is that emotions have wisdom. They have themes in our lives that we need to think about. Like sadness tells us, wow, I'm an 11-year-old girl and I miss my friends in Minnesota and I'm changing. And there's loss involved with change.
Yeah.
Emotions have wisdom. And then emotions help us navigate our social lives, right? And so what sadness does throughout that movie is it brings her closer to her parents, right? And it helps her move into a new stage of identity. So, emotions have long been thought to be disruptive and irrational and problematic. And in fact, the opposite is true. And I thought people were really struck by Inside Out and astonished because it said, wow, sadness is actually okay. It teaches us a lot and it points us in a good direction.
And so does this entire book. I hope you read and enjoy.